Blog Talk Radio.
Michiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Neye Ojirada Medinde Ojirapo Kwesi Ranahmpata Akan Akwamumain Amaruka Etibimu Ojirapo Ojiramain Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is Ojira Day, Purification Day. My name is Ojirapo Kwesi Ranahmpata Akan. Ojirapo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. Once again, we are opening up the chat room right now. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you have a question or a comment in the chat room, you must log in as a user in the chat room in order to interact in the chat room. If you do not have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk and we'll be able to interact. We have a couple of announcements, and we're going to place a couple of links in the chat room. The first announcement, and we're going to place this link here. We placed a link for the Kokoba link to on our webpage, our Kokoba webpage. We will be having a presentation in Washington, D.C. this Saturday, Washington, D.C. at 6:30 p.m. Of course, it's a free event for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. It is part of our Kokoba movement. This is the second presentation in that Kokoba movement, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality from the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community through Ancestral Religion. So we just posted the link, and we just updated the page just a minute ago, as a matter of fact. So you'll see the flyer. You can download the flyer. You can share that information. We will be posting an event notification on Facebook, but we just updated the page, just posted the flyer on Facebook on our Kokoba page, so you can like. Please go to the Kokoba page, like that page. And of course, when we're talking about Kokoba, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality from the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community, of course, there is a white agenda, the dissexual, homosexual agenda that the whites and their offspring as spirits of disorder, which is their ill nature. They seek to promote that perversity and force that on our community, to disrupt and destroy our community from the inside out. So, of course, we fight against that, and we will defeat that. This sexuality, homosexuality has never been part, of course, of our culture because it is insane. It is out of harmony with reality. It is out of harmony with creation. The Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the Ntorotu, the Great Mother, the Great Father, Amenet and Amen, or Nyamewa, Nyame, the Nsamampo hate this sexuality. They despise this sexuality. They repel this sexuality. That's always been the case. This sexuality or homosexuality is of the ill nature of the whites and their offspring as spirits of disorder. They are sexual deviant by nature. So any form of sexual deviance, whether it's bisexuality, homosexuality, bestiality, child molestation, that is part of the nature of the whites and their offspring. White Europeans, white Americans, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Asians, white Hindus, white Arabs, non-black people, they are the spirits of disorder. And of course, that is their nature. That has absolutely nothing to do with us. They are the cancerous cells within the body. We are the healthy cells. They have a temporal existence. We have an eternal existence. So that is their nature. That has nothing to do with us. So, of course, we published our book, Kokoba, proving that bisexuality, homosexuality was never accepted in ancient Kemet. We go through the various texts that the white and offspring seek to put forward to promote this false idea that this sexuality, homosexuality is part of ancient Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture, which of course it is not. So they put forward a few texts out of the thousands and thousands of texts found all throughout ancient Kemet. They found about 7 instances that they would like to promote as evidence, but of course we show conclusively that not only are these texts not evidence of the acceptance of this sexuality, homosexuality, they are actually a repudiation of that perversity. So we prove that conclusively, and there's no question and there's no debate. So we proved that in our book, part of the Kokobo movement, and we had one of our presentations on Kokobo back in November, and then we're back in January. We give away a free copy of the soft cover version of the Kokobo publication to everyone who attends the event. And of course, we do that with all of our presentations, every event that we go to, that we deal with all across the country. We give away a free copy of the specific book that we are presenting on to everyone who attends the event. And of course, the ebook versions of all 17 of our books are free downloads from our website, just in general. Of course, we have the soft cover versions that range between $8 and $11. But when we do a presentation, all of our presentations are free to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community and open to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community only. They're always free. We do not charge. And of course, we don't charge a speaker's fee to come out to different states, cities to speak. And we also give away a free copy of one of our books, our softcover books, to everyone who attends. So they get to attend a free event and leave with a free copy of one of our books, notwithstanding the fact of whether or not you have funds or not. You receive information, ancestrally inherited information, which is part of your birthright, which we cannot place a charge on that, and then you receive a copy of one of our books. We've given away over 700 softcover books at these different events, and we want to keep that going. Part of the Kokobo movement is to give away thousands of copies of the book Kokobo, which proves this sexuality, homosexuality was never accepted in our ancestral culture and shows the cosmological foundation, the divine prohibition against this sexuality, homosexuality in ancient Kemet, in the Medusa, in the hieroglyphs, in the cosmology of the culture, and of course, within our culture in general, wherever Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people exist in the world. And then we also go further to show that through ancestral religion, those of our people, which is the vast majority of our people who get involved in those perverse, not lifestyles, but death styles, the vast majority, 90+% of our people who get involved in that perversity is through some form of trauma, some form of violence, some form of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, some form of abuse. So our people get involved in that because of that torture, because of that abuse, and they have the capacity through the embrace of ancestral religion to overcome that perversity and shut down those perverse desires that have been imposed upon them by this culture, the whites and their offspring, conditioning, as well as discarnate spirits of relatives and non-relatives who were perverse, who were child molesters, criminals, disordered individuals, and they are still seeking to influence people from the spirit realm after they die and make their transition. They are still earthbound, seeking to influence some of our people. When our people are open to these influences, then they assume that these desires and thoughts that they have must be theirs because surely they arise in their own head. It must be their own thoughts. So they're saying, why am I feeling like this? In reality, this is some discarnate, perverse entity, individual who's seeking to impose themselves upon the individual. When you engage in ancestral religious practice, you can repel those individuals with ease, those discarnate spirits with ease, and those perverse desires which were never yours in the first place, cease, permanent. So we deal with that as well. So you get to see all that information on the Kokobo page on the website. And the second link that we will post in the chat room is the Etchi sign link. The Etchi sign Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference, which is coming up March 20th, the first day of the spring equinox, the Festel Bere, the beautiful time of the spring equinox, Festel Bere, as it's called in our Khan tradition. That is March 20th. It's in Awusida, Akwesida, a Sunday, March 20th. We're having an all-day conference on Etchi sign Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African Ancestral Religious Reversion, which is a movement. This is our first annual conference. It will, of of course, be a yearly conference at the same time of the year around the equinox. We're talking about ancestral religious reversion. We don't engage in conversion. Conversion is transforming someone into something. We engage in etchi-san. Etchi means back in the language of the Akan as well as ancient Kemet in the Medusa, the hieroglyphs, and sign means to return. So etchi-san means to return back. We're talking about not conversion but reversion, returning to our primordial, pristine, our natural essence, our capacity to align with the Great Mother and the Great Father through the agency of the deities and ancestral spirits, the Aposom and Nananom Insalam. So we're going to have a number of different presenters. We're going to have vendors and so forth. Of course, it's an all-day event from 11 to 7. Of course, it's a free event open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. We'll have a number of presenters talking about different expressions of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion. We will be dealing with the Akan tradition. We have a brother dealing with the Yoruba tradition. Another sister who will be dealing with the Mbundu tradition coming out of Central Afuraitkaitnit, but she's Gullah Geechee, and that's part of the ancestral tradition born of the blood circle. Just as we will be speaking about the Akan tradition born of the blood circles of our people here in North America, who do, of course, is the Akan tradition in North America. We have maintained our ancestral religious traditions. We've maintained the Yoruba tradition here, the Akan tradition here, the Congo tradition here, the Fon and Ebe and Mina traditions here, the Bambara traditions here, under our various forms, Hoodoo, Juju, Vodun, Grigri, and so forth, Gullah Geechee cultures, and various others. So we'll be talking about various different traditions. We're going to have about 7 presenters. So far we have 4, so when you go to the Etchi-san page, you'll see 4 of the presenters there. We also have, we'll be building that list. So far you'll see 4. Continue to check the page so you'll also, you'll see the list of speakers expand. If you would like to vend at the event, when you go to the Etchi-san page, you will see the vendor's registration application. We do provide a table, a 6-foot table with 2 chairs. The vending space for the entire day, 11 to 7, is $30. And if you would like to place an ad in our journal, we'll be publishing a journal, Etchi-san Ancestral Religious Reversion Journal, for the event. It will be given away. It's a book that will be given away to everyone who attends the event, but also it will be placed online, the ebook version, so people will have access to that free edition as well. We will also sell the softcover version as well. But at the event, everyone who comes to the event will receive a free copy of that book. We'll have articles on ancestral religion, culture, philosophy, health, and so forth, natural, holistic health, various different things. We'll also have a directory in the back for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions. So if you would like to place an ad in the journal, you send us your JPEG file, go to the Etchi-san page, and you'll see the rates for the ads. It's a full-size 8.5 by 11 magazine-size journal. It will be in color. So a 1/4 ad is $25, a half-page ad is $35, a full-page ad, which of course is full color, is $50. You'll see those rates. You can make those, make that payment there, and send us your JPEG files. We need to get those in as soon as possible so we can get the printing done ahead of time, and so forth. So that's the update with regard to that. We will continuously be posting those updates. We have a Kokobo page, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality in the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community through Ancestral Religion on Facebook. We also have an Etchi-san page on Facebook as well, the Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference page. So please like those pages as well as our other pages we have, and share that information. And again, we'll be posting an event notification for the event coming up this Saturday in Washington, D.C. That is the Kokobo Movement event. And that's January 16th from 6:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. The flyer is already up on the page, and we'll do the event notification. It'll be out after this broadcast. Okay, so we're going to put a couple of links in the chat room for the articles that we're going to deal with tonight. And as we put these here, So for the individuals who are new to the broadcast, we typically have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akanfo Nana Som, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, on Jordan Monday nights, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of Ancestral Religion. We are Akan. That's one reason. Of course, the second reason is because of the misinformation that is being propagated in the Western Hemisphere, as well as by individuals on the continent who are Akan as well, but who have been infected by white culture, pseudo-religion, Christianity, white culture, Islam, various pseudo-traditions over the past 100 to 200 years, especially. And those infections have crept into the presentation of the culture. So when you interact and interface with such individuals, their presentation of the culture on the surface looks authentic and traditional, but in reality it's been infected with pseudo-religion and philosophy. So we deal with our ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, dealing with our ancient expression going all the way back to ancient Khanat, the title of ancient Nubia, the Khan land, which is the title of Nubia, the Khan people, our Khanit people, Akanit people, a title of the people of ancient Nubia. We migrated to the western part of the continent a couple of thousand years ago after the invasions of ancient Kemet, reestablished the Khanat Empire, the Nubian Empire, so-called Ghana. About 1,000 years later, some of our people migrated to the forest belt, to the regions of today's Republic of Ghana and Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, and reestablished Akana civilization in those regions. And then a few hundred years later, some of our people were forced from those regions to the Western Hemisphere during the Umusuo Ketie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And that is how we ended up in the Western Hemisphere. But we maintained our ancestral religious tradition, Hoodoo in North America, Obia in Jamaica, Winti in Suriname, and so forth. And we waged war against the whites and their offspring in these various areas and forced the end of enslavement, and that includes in the Northern Hemisphere, North America. So we deal with that from an ancestrally inherited, authentic perspective. Akanfo Nanasom, authentic Akan ancestral religion. And we deal with the cosmology and so forth, the nature of the Abosom, the Nsamanfo, the deities and ancestral spirits, the nature of Nyamewa, Nyame, the great mother, great father, and so forth, Yonkompon and Yonkonton, the creator and creatress, and various other topics. On Tuesday nights, of course, we have ODWIRA, which we will get into. On Wednesday nights, we have Egua Marketplace, where we have individuals, institutions, organizations, our people who are serving our people in a positive capacity, who maintain their ancestral religious values in the process. So we have had a number of individuals come on to the show and talk about their business, organization, and institution so that you can support and learn directly from them and support them. We've also published the Okom Economic Development Model. We will put that link in the chat room as well. And the Okom Economic Development Model is economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. So we published that model. You can download that and the 4-part series we did on that model on Blog Talk on the Okom Economic Development Model page. You'll also see the list of businesses, organizations, and institutions who have come onto the show, their website, as well as the links to their 2-hour interviews they did with us, part of the Okom Economic Development Model page and process and model is to starve the beast and feed the pride. That is the strategy wherein you make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds you would have wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then you starve the beast and feed the pride. You reallocate those funds away from those white businesses and direct them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We are supporting and targeting one Afurakani business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks, which we began last February. So we've got a number of businesses that we've supported as a community. We do that for optimal capital infusion. So as we always say, if one person, if you take $10 you would have spent, wasted at Walmart or CVS or 7-Eleven in the course of a week, and you starve the beast and feed the pride, you reallocate that $10 to the business of the week, then they receive $10 in the capital. If 1,000 of our people engage that process of starving the beast and feeding the pride, then that's a $10,000 infusion of capital into a black business, which allows them to expand and serve us at a greater capacity, provide us with the products and services that we were getting from our enemies, the whites and their offspring. Now we can receive those products and services from our people. They can expand. They can hire people within the community, and so forth. if we do not engage that process by default, we are leaving that money in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring. We are therefore financing our own oppression, servicing them, employing them, empowering them and their children and so forth. We're either going to support them and their children, or we're going to support our people and our children and leave our enemies to suffer and eventually separate themselves from our community. And of course, they've been just a parasitic entity within our community all along. So this is what we do on Oklahoma Economic Development. Tomorrow we're going to have a broadcast. It will be a special time. We typically broadcast at 9 p.m. or sometimes 9:30 p.m. But because of scheduling with regard to our guests, we will be broadcasting at 4 p.m. And our guest will be Wabet Raven Seshat Satheru. She is the authoress of Wachet Yoga, which is a book which is coming out, and she will be doing a presentation on her book Wachet Yoga, which is an ancestral approach to Wachet Ankh or Wachet Yoga, dealing with the divinity Wachet, which came through her from her ancestresses and ancestors. She'll be doing that presentation in Orlando this weekend, January 17th. So she'll be talking about that. She'll be talking about her book. She'll be talking about the cosmological foundation of her book and the ritual so forth of Wachet Ankh or Wachet Yoga. That'll be tomorrow at 4 p.m. on this Blog Talk station, and we'll send out a notification for that as well. And you can go to that event in Orlando, and we're going to get into detail about that. It'll be a 2-hour interview, so we look forward to that. All right. So we want to get into this information, which we had published a couple of notes last month. One of the notes being note on Torah being the origin of the term Torah, and note on the term Qura being the origin of the term Quran. So we put that information out in more detail because we addressed it very briefly in one of our books, the Kukutuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction. We mentioned it briefly in a summary fashion at the end of our publication, Kukutuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, but we didn't go into detail. The Kukutuntun went into detail about how the various characters, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Brahman, Buddha, Allah, Yahweh, all of these characters are fictional cartoon characters who never existed in any form or of any race whatsoever. So we show how they were manufactured and so forth. We also deal with the cosmological foundation of creation. At the end of the book, we talk about very briefly the fact that the Quran and the Torah and all these other pseudo-scriptures have no value whatsoever. They are corrupted fragments of writings from ancient Kemet, and we prove that. Now, with regard to the title, we mentioned that in the Kukutuntun, but on these two notes, we went into some more detail to prove conclusively where the names and titles of these pseudo-scriptures come from, directly stolen from our text and titles of our text. So we're going to get into that. Of course, number one, we talk about the cosmological foundation, the etymological origin of these terms, how they were corrupted and so forth. And the key here is the lack, as we say, the lack of facility with the practice or in the practice of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral religion, African ancestral religion, no matter what form it takes. Lack of facility in that practice, engaging the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, engaging the Nananom, the Mafo, the Kuvito, the Egungun, and so forth. When you lack that facility because you embrace the whites and their offspring of their pseudo-religions or pseudo-practices, pseudo-philosophies like atheism and all other kinds of nonsense, when you have no facility to engage directly with the Abosom, then you do not have the capacity to attune to what's really happening in these cosmological expositions of our culture. So you have no capacity to understand the etymological origin of these many terms or the cosmological foundation of these various terms. So pseudo-scholars they become cosmologically incompetent. They have no capacity to understand. So they just mimic the nonsense of the white snare offspring, or they follow methods laid out, which are inferior pseudo methods of investigative inquiry laid out by the white snare offspring, and it yields foolish and ignorant and misguided, misinformed results on a consistent basis. But when you have facility with the abosom, with the orisha, with the vodou, because you embrace your ancestral culture, then you have the capacity to see these texts come alive, see these cosmological stories and so forth manifest through your direct experience with the abosom. And therefore, when you study language, when you study culture, when you look at these various stories and expositions of the interfacing of these forces in creation, you have a direct understanding because you have direct knowledge and experience of these dynamics taking place. And we've did a broadcast previously talking about akom and unkom, spirit possession, spirit communication being the key to understanding cosmology. And this is an expression of that. So the first text we're going to deal with is our note on Torah, Ra being the origin of the term Torah. We're going to go through this information, and we placed the link in the chat room for those who came in a little bit later. And again, so we published the note a little bit over a month ago, but we briefly mentioned the information in the Kuku Tuntun. We just wanted to give some more details based on what we already spoke about and wrote about in the Kuku Tuntun. We just want to give some more direct references and details to that so people can really understand what we were referencing. So we show an image from the Ani Sheftu, the papyrus of Ani, from the Runu Pert Imheru, so-called Book of Coming Forth by Day, Misnomer, Book of the Dead. And we show him, of course, Ani was a scribe who died in ancient Kemet about 3,300 years ago. The papyrus is found in his tomb. Of course, you know, you find these texts vary with different people and so forth. This is why the White Nile Spring, one of the reasons they labeled them the Book of the Dead and so forth. You'll also find the text from these papyri carved, you know, and painted inside of coffins and tombs and so forth. So now the above image that we show, and it's very critical. This is from the beginning, from the section, from the Runu Pert Imheru, and it's in the beginning. The key is their ritual incantation, ritual prayer from the Runu Pert Imheru. They weren't only to be read for the spirit of the deceased individual to assist him or her in the journey to the Duat, the ancestral realm. That's one of the reasons that we had these various texts to assist the deceased person in the ancestral realm when they make their transition, when the spirit separates from the body, so they can navigate their way to connect with the other ancestresses and ancestors who preceded them, so they can dwell with them in peace. If they made missteps or were drawn away from that community, then they get caught up earthbound and hanging out with other wayward, criminal-type, discarnate, deceased individuals, causing all kinds of problems. So one of the reasons we have these ritual texts and so forth, and speak these invocations, recite these invocations and so forth, to generate that kind of energy to help propel that spirit and guide them in a harmonious fashion to the community of ancestresses and ancestors. So they were not only to be read for the spirit of the deceased individual, to assist him or her on the journey to the Duat, the ancestral realm, to live a peaceful existence with his or her ancestresses and ancestors who preceded him or her in death. These ritual incantations were also utilized during the course of everyday life, spiritual sustenance, development, and protection on earth. That's key, and that goes back to what we said initially. When you do not have facility with the practice of ancestral religion, that does not come across your awareness. You don't see in these texts what's going on an everyday basis. When people engage ritual practice, as soon as they look at one of these murals, they recognize what's happening because they engage that process. When they invoke and provoke and evoke these divinities and ancestral spirits on a regular basis, when they see the movements of the people and the forms and the positions of the people, they know exactly what's happening because they do that on a regular basis at their own shrine. But if you're not engaged in that practice, you just look at some mural and say, oh, this must have something to do simply with some myth about the afterworld and the deceased. But it has to do with being utilized during the course of everyday life. We have the statement at the end of chapter 18 of the Ani Papyrus, or that section. And this is what it says at the end of that particular section that's labeled chapter 18, but it's one of the sections. It says in the Sheftu, in the papyrus, it was written over 3,300 years ago, if one says this chapter while pure, it means going forth by day after he has been buried, and the assumption of which of his forms he desires. Now, as to anyone over whom this incantation is recited, it means being prosperous upon earth. He shall emerge from every fire. Nothing evil shall encircle him. A matter 1,000,000 times true. So not only after death do you assist an ancestral spirit, a mother, a grandmother, father, grandfather, aunt, uncle, and so forth, cousin, makes their transition. Spirit comes to you in dreams. Their spirit comes to you during the course before the funeral and so forth, leading up to the day of the funeral, afterwards and so forth. And then you assist them ritually to make their journey to the ancestral realm so they can become firmly seated with their ancestresses and ancestors, which are yours as well, so they can begin to continue their development as an ancestral spirit. So you engage that process. But not only that, it says also to anyone over whom this incantation is recited, it means being prosperous upon earth. Now that's key. He shall emerge from every fire. Nothing evil shall encircle him. A matter 1,000,000 times true. He shall overcome these various obstacles. Nothing evil shall encircle him, meaning he can repel the wayward, discarnate spirits which seek to misinform and misguide. Also, negative individuals who would seek to encircle him or come into his sphere activity. He can repel them as well because the spiritual power that he emits, he or she has the capacity to repel these evil or disordered individuals or entities. The same Ntoru deities, the same Akutu ancestral spirits that we invoke and evoke to protect and guide the spirits of our deceased family members in the spirit world after the transition of death are the same Ntoru and Akutu, the deities and ancestral spirits that we invoke and evoke daily to protect and guide us throughout our lives in the physical world. Meaning when you see Asar and Aset and Nebet-Het and these various divinities, funerary texts, and they assist the deceased to navigate their way through the pathways after making transitions so they can get to the ancestral realm and live in a peaceful existence. We don't just invoke them after death. We invoke Asar and Aset and Nebet-Het and Heru and Anpu and so forth throughout the course of everyday life to guide us throughout our everyday lives. So it's not just a death text. And people who engage in ancestral religion understand the Ntoru, Ntorotu, and Akutu deities and ancestral spirits in Kemet are the Abosom and Nananom Nsamapuanakan, the Orisha and Egungun in Yoruba, the Vodun and Kuvito and Thon and Eve culture, etc. As Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, we have worshipped, invoked, been possessed by, been healed by, and received guidance from these same deities and ancestral spirits who are connected to our blood circles for thousands of years. This continues today wherever we are found in the world, including the Western Hemisphere, for those who practice Kudu, Juju, Vodun, Rigri, Galagichi. That foundation is key. The same text we read for the deceased individual are the same text and ritual prayers that we recite throughout the course of everyday life, dealing with the same deities, dealing with the same ancestral spirit. the title of the beginning chapter, a section of the overall work, is properly translated as the worship of Ra. The Toro, misnomer netter, but the Toro, as is vocalized in ancient Kemet as well as the Akan tradition, the Toro, the deity Ra, is the creator of the universe, while the Toro, so-called netter, the Toro, the goddess Ra'et, is the creatress of the universe. Ra uses the Aten, and Ra'et uses the Aten, the sun, as a physical transmitter of his spiritual energy, and hers as well. This is why he is often misnomered the sun god. However, Ra and Ra'et actually created the Aten, the sun. Then we show an image of Ra sitting in the solar boat next to the sun, to the Aten. So the Aten is sitting in the boat, and sitting next to the boat is Ra, the spirit, the deity, the spirit force that animates and gives life and vitality and power to the sun and the various other stars as well, and to all created entities as well. So we show Ra in his falcon-headed form sitting in the boat of the Aten, which rises from the eastern horizon and sails through the sky to ultimately set in the western horizon. The beginning of the day is sunrise, and we thus see Ra in his boat of the Aten, the sun, to inaugurate a new day cycle. Each day that we rise thus begins with the worship of Ra. That's the title of the beginning of the text, is called the worship of Ra. Each day that we rise thus begins with the worship of Ra. We thus have the beginning of our ritual text entitled Worship of Ra, when he rises in the horizon of the eastern heaven. So that's a long title. You'll find that in the papyrus of the scribe Ani, who died about 3,300 years ago. The long title is the Worship of Ra as he rises in the horizon of the eastern heaven. However, we also have variations of this title, including simply the Worship of Ra. In the language of Kemet, this title, Worship of Ra, is TUA Ra. And we showed the Medusa for that. So, for example, in the papyrus of, and we showed the papyrus of the individual Necht, who made his transition as well. We show that as well. But TUA, we show the Medusa for that. TUA, T-U-A or D-U-A, D-W-A, Dua means to do something in the morning. It shows the symbol of the TUA symbol, five-pointed star, the symbol of the bird, and then the sun disk. To do something in the morning, TUA. Then you have TUA also means to cry out, and it shows the image of the individual with his hands, with the palms facing outward like in a pushing motion. To call, to cry out. So TUA means to do something in the morning. It also means the morning. TUA, the morning. It also means to cry or to call out. Then we also show TUA also means to praise, to adore, to honor. Tuat, praise, a hymn of praise. So TUA, the verb meaning to praise. Tuat, with the T at the end, is the noun meaning praise, a hymn of praise, praises, or written hymns of praise. So to praise is TUA, or to invoke, to worship, TUA, to do something in the morning, TUA, to call or cry out, TUA. But it also means to praise, to honor, to adore. Then, of course, we have the divinity Ra. We showed the Medusa for that. So from the papyrus, the title of the beginning of the text is the TUA Ra, the worship of Ra. We show the full title from the papyrus of Ani. TUA Ra Ubenef Aket Abtet Pet. The worship of Ra when he rises in the horizon east in the sky, or the eastern horizon. But then from a different papyrus of the royal scribe and head of the soldiers, his name was Necht, 3,500 years ago. In his particular papyrus that was buried with him, it's simply called TUA Ra, the worship of Ra, by the royal scribe, the overseer of the soldier's neck. So this is the Torah of the scribe neck. It was just the short version, the Torah of neck. The Torah of Ani, they had an extended version of the title. This is the Torah, the worship of Ra, when he rises in the eastern horizon of the heavenly realm or of the sky. But the Torah of neck is simply the worship of Ra, Torah Ansu Anmar Minti Fitu Na. Worship of Ra by the royal scribe, the overseer of the soldier's neck. So, here we have the basic title of the text, the Torah of the scribe and overseer neck, which was buried in his tomb as well. Although the text begins with an invocation of Temu Herakuti as a title of Ra Temu Herakuti, who rises in the horizon, this added descriptive was not included in the title of the text. It is simply titled Torah, the worship of Ra. The same is true of various other renditions as well. All in society were familiar with the text and ritual practice called the Torah or the worship of Ra. Then we take note of the hand positions of the worshiper and the Medutu and the image of Ani himself. So we show an image of Ani himself in the papyrus. He has his hands up in front of him in a pushing motion that you see those two raised hands like they're pushing towards someone. Incompetence is that form of worship and so forth. The hands raised up near the face, the palms turned outward. We show those postures in the different papyrus, one from the papyrus of Ani, one from the papyrus of Neck, and the actual image of Ani himself in that position, in that posture. The posture shown by the individual in the Medutu and by Ani is not a static posture, but a functional act. Again, this comes from direct ritual practice. Some Negroes will see that image and they say, oh, I'm practicing the culture of ancient Kemet, so they will stand in that form and put their hands up in the sky and stand there frozen like a frozen picture and think that they're engaged in something. Snapshot, no different than if you saw somebody walking and you took a picture of them and you caught them in a frame and they were just in mid-stride. That doesn't mean that when someone says, I am walking, they just stand in mid-stride and just stand there for 20 minutes. That's not walking. But if you snap the picture, that's all you see. The same thing with these snapshots. This is a functional act. It's not a position where people are posing, like posing for a picture, or just static. It's dynamic. When people engage the ritual process, they actually engage this process and provoke the abosom in this fashion, with this posture. And they understand that. But Negroes who are pseudo-scholars don't understand that because they have no facility with the abosom, so they don't know what they're looking at when they see these postures. So, it's not static, it's a functional act. Individual is involved in the worship or ritual invocation of the deity through provocation. When the hands are turned outward in a pushing fashion, we are ritually and literally provoking the energy of the Untoro, the deity, the god or the goddess, the abosom, the Orisha. This ritual movement continues to be used today. When we engage in the laying on of hands, we've been doing that. You'll see that in ancient Kemet. You'll see deities with the electromagnetic wave, the Medut symbol for the water line, the in water line, the wave energy line floating above their hand, or they're putting their hands on a deceased person, the mummy, or another divinity and so forth, laying hands. All the way, that of course, has gone on all over the continent for healing purposes and transference of energy as well, all the way into North America, of course. Even when our people were practicing hoodoo, voodoo, juju to this day, laying hands to heal people. When you use those palms and lay hands in a provocatory fashion, you're provoking the energy of the individual. If you went and pushed a pit bull while they were laying down and pushed them hard, that's a provocation. And then there will be a response of energy from that entity. In the same fashion, we use our hands to push or provoke when we're pushed in that pushing fashion to provoke the energy of the abosom. If we're at a shrine, in the house, or in a temple, or wherever, or a sanctuary, or in a natural shrine in nature, utilizing our energy to provoke the energy of the abosom. That's a provocatory act. Laying of hands is part of that ritual process we never lost, and of course we continue to do. We provoke the energy of the person's body for healing or for the repelling of negative spirits in the practice of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Ancestral Religion. We are engaged in ritual provocation. In contrast, if our palms are turned upward in a receiving posture, we are engaged in ritual convocation. We're receiving something. We're drawing in like a magnet, pulling some energy in. We're receiving what is being sent out. When we turn those palms outward to push or provoke or to send or to transfer or transmit, we're engaged in a provocatory act, a ritual provocation. So that's the difference between provocation and convocation. So the convocation is drawing the energy to us. The act of provocation is literally a projecting, a shooting of energy outward to stimulate the energetic body of the deity, ancestral spirit, plant, animal, or individual we are focused upon. This is a lived experience which is quantifiable. In the same fashion, the two magnets on a table whose like polarities are facing can push one another across the table without touching because of their magnetic field. We have the capacity and proactively employ our capacity to project our energy outward, to touch, push, provoke the individual or entity upon whom we are focused ritually. Of course, if someone is staring at you intently and you're a little bit receptive, you can feel them staring. That's a transmitting of energy across space, and you can feel that electromagnetic projection emanating from them and affecting your electromagnetic field and you even physically. This is why the term TUA also means to cry, to call out. So TUA is the literal image of the man or the woman's hand in a quote-unquote praise or worship position, but it's a provocation of energy. They're pushing, shooting, ejecting out from their hands the energy of their own ba, their divine living energy, to project toward the deity, the ancestral spirit, the entity, or whatever. That's TUA, to provoke, ritual provocation. The whites and offspring only saw that as adoration because they saw the hands up in the air. They're like, oh, they're praising the deity. They're adoring the dead. It's ritual provocation. TUA, to ritually provoke. But TUA also means to cry out, to call. Why is to cry out, to call also a meaning for TUA when TUA means to ritually provoke by sending or shooting energy through the hand? Because sound vibrations are matrices of energy that are projected. One can sing at such a pitch and volume that the sound vibrations alone can break a glass. This is the releasing, shooting, sending out of energetic vibrations, unseen power that can affect solid matter in a manner that can be measured and quantified obviously. When the glass pops or breaks, that's a measurable activity. That's a measurable phenomenon. So this is what we're dealing with. This is why TUA not only means ritual provocation with the hand, gesture of worship or provocation, ritual provocation, but TUA also means to cry out because once again you're shooting out, sending out sound vibrations, calling out, crying out. That is ritual provocation as well. If you're far away in a dark place and someone cries out your name, the sound vibrations provoke your eardrums, and that causes you a response from you. Whether you want to respond or not, you can't help but respond to those sound vibrations. Now, the terms TUA and TUAO related to the morning and doing something in the morning. As we showed in the Medusa, that's one of the definitions. TUA to ritually provoke, TUA to call or cry out, TUA meaning morning or to do something in the morning, is referencing our invocation of Ra and Ra'et as soon as we rise. This was a practice in ancient Kemet and continues to be our practice today. And you'll even see with the baboons in ancient Kemet, you see them with their hands up in the sky. You will see the hands, the baboons, literally in Kemet, when the sun rises, holding their palms up to the sun. But this is a practice that was engaged in ancient Kemet. You see it all over the walls. They were literally engaged in those quote-unquote sun salutations or provocation of Ra and Ra'et in the beginning, in the morning. That's the first thing that happens. That's the beginning. The sun rises. It's a new day. It's the manifestation of Ra and Ra'et operating through the sun, so we richly provoke their energy. It was practiced back then. It continues to be our practice today. When we rise, and we typically rise with the Aten every morning, the first thing that we do is cleanse ourselves and go directly to the family shrine to invoke the Abosom Nsamanfo, the deities and ancestral spirits. This is true of children and adults. So we have our children go salute the shrine, salute the Abosom Nsamanfo, as well as adults. It is only after saluting the deities and ancestral spirits at the shrines that we can then go and exercise, eat breakfast, and prepare for the day. So we rise with the sun, cleanse ourselves, and provoke them. That's the first thing you do in the morning. Dua. Call out, provoke. Dua. Engage in ritual provocation. Twa. Every morning, Twa. We engage in the ritual of Twa. So Twa Ra. This is a living culture rooted in our cosmology, which is founded upon our direct communication with the deities, unbroken for thousands of years. The whites and their offspring learned of religion upon their invasions of our ancient civilization. They learned of the ritual of Twa Ra, as well as the writing so-called scriptures, so-called Book of the Dead, and various other Runu, Pertinent Haru, and other writings that were titled Twa Ra when interacting with our people in ancient Kemet. After the Greek and Roman invasion, they employed themselves as scribes and wrote copies of the Twa Ra themselves, copying from our text. You'll see in ancient Kemet, of course, when the Greeks get involved, they start copying our text down. They're writing out, and you see these perverse images of themselves, mummified and so forth, and they're writing papyri in imitation of us. And instead of the Twa Ra of Ani, or the Twa Ra of the scribe Net, now it's the Twa Ra of Cleopatra, or the Twa Ra of Bernice, or the Twa Ra of Ptolemy, and so forth. And they have their own white scribes rewriting the Twa Ra for every one of their people, every person, every day, imitating our people. After the Greek and Roman invasions, they employed themselves as scribes and wrote copies of the Twa Ra themselves, copying from our text. The Twa Ra, or invocation, provocation, worship of Ra, was a daily occurrence until the person died. Every morning there's a quote-unquote sun salutation, but really the Twa Ra, the worship of Ra, the worship of Ra'et, the invocation of them. Every day until the person died. Upon death, the last Twa Ra ritual for the person was written in the texts which were buried in his or her tomb. They were recited to help propel or project the discarnates to the community of the ancestresses and ancestors without incident, as we said. We engage the same ritual practice today when our loved ones transition to the ancestral realm via death. The whites who invaded and settled in Kemet heard the invocation Twa Ra and observed its ritual practice within our community every single day. They heard us say that, Twa Ra, worship of Ra, invocation of Ra. They saw us write it. They saw us engage in the process of the literal provocation with our hands, Twa of Ra, and they saw us engage that every single day of their lives. Some of them, of course, would begin to imitate our ritual practices, learn our language, and copy our writing system. The phrase and action Twa Ra was spoken by them and vulgarly imitated by them every day of their lives for centuries after the invasion. So once they invade our culture and start dressing like our people and taking on names and calling themselves children of Amen and children of Ptah and all the other nonsense, just like you have crackers today trying to call themselves children of Obatala and children of Oshun and so forth, and trying to learn the Yoruba language and imitate everything our people are doing. Of course, the Orisha do not communicate with any cracker, never has, never will, and that includes white, Hispanic. The same thing went on in ancient Kemet. Some of these crackers today are those same Greeks and Romans from back then who have reincarnated. Just like they invaded ancient Kemet, they're trying to invade the Yoruba tradition today. And the intelligent amongst our people recognize that and ban them, of course, by nature. They have no capacity to engage any aspect of our culture. They are always fraud and parasites. So, with the whites and offspring, we're engaged in that every single day because they were imitating our people. They imitated our people. They spoke the same language. They were saying Torah every morning. They were getting up and putting their hands in the Torah or Torah, literally every morning in the Torah in the morning, engaged in that, reciting it, and later writing it every day of their lives for centuries. Now, the term is spelled in the Medusa with the open palm turned upward, the curved rope, and the bird, and that's some will call it the vulture. We recognize it as an African fish eagle, which is for a number of reasons. We're going to get into that in a later publication. That particular palm is phonetically the English letter D, and then the wa, which is dwa. However, the variation of the same term is spelled with the medut for the T sound. It's also part of the language. So you have it spelled twa, T-W-A or T-U-A, twa, but then you also have it spelled with the medut or symbol for the D sound. So D-W-A or D-U-A, dwa. So we showed both. We showed the one with the D, dwa, meaning morning, to pray, to praise, to invoke praises, also meaning morning, with the T, but also with the D sound. Now, and then we show the wa, the W-A sound. So you have T, and then the W-A sound. The rope, the bent rope with the lasso, kind of like a lasso rope bent over, is the wa sound, U-A or W-A, wa. So you have T, and then in the U-A sound, wa. That wa sound in the ancient dialect, by the time you get to Coptic, the late Kemet dialect, that is translated as an O. So it becomes to. So instead of toi, it becomes to in Coptic. And we show that in the Medutu and citation for Coptic as well, with the T-O in Coptic. Now we say that, and then we get to the section in the Kukutuntum, our book, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, where we reference this and summarize it, but we didn't go into all the detail we're going into now. On page 72 of the Kukutuntum, we said, the Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Old Testament of the Bible, are not holy writings. They are not divinely inspired. Inspired in the language of Kemet, the term Torah means worship. Torah thus means the worship of Ra. This is a title of many compositions written in Kemet by Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit for thousands of years. Torah, or the worship of Ra, was corrupted by the whites into Torah and used as a title for a series of plagiarisms and perversions describing the white false philosophy and worship of their fictional God. That's page 72 in our book, Kukutuntum, the Ancestral Jurisdiction. That was a summary of this information. In this note, we go into detail about why we said that with the various proofs. Now, we demonstrate, as we said in the Kukutuntum, that Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Moses, Aaron, David, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Jesus, Yeshua, Ben Pandera, Muhammad, Bilal, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, Brahman, etc., are all absolutely fictional cartoon characters who never existed, of any race or in any form whatsoever. We show the actual deities from ancient Kemet, from whom names and descriptive titles were stolen and applied to fictional characters, fictional white characters, and then those white characters were later blackened up for Negroes who didn't want to go along with white characters who never existed, so if they just painted them black, some Negroes would follow that. Like you see Santa Claus, if you give him a little black skin, and some Negroes will say, well, maybe he really did exist because he's black now. They did that with Muhammad. They did that with Yeshua ben Pandera, who's a fictional character, Jesus, Isa, Yeshua, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, David, Solomon, all of these characters, Jacob, Esau, none of them existed. Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, all of them. So They need to do that in order to place them into a pseudo history in Palestine, Arabia, Syria, and so on. We mentioned that the term Holy Bible is derived from Helios, Biblos. Helios, holy, comes from Helios. Helios is the Greek perversion of the name of Ra. That was the term that they used for Ra, talking about the sun. They would say Helios. That's a corruption of Ra. Just like Osiris is a corruption of Osad, and Isis is a corruption of Aset, and Horus is a corruption of Heru. Helios is a corruption of Ra, and really a title of Ra. So the whites in our offspring, they call him Helios. Of course, we call him Ra. The Helios Biblos, and then the term holy comes from Helios. So the Helios Biblos, Biblios, and Biblos comes from Pipros, papyrus, and so forth. Papyrus is the origin of the term papers, but papers is from papyrus. Papyrus is papyrus of Pipros, Biblos, Biblios, Helios, Biblios. That is the papyrus of Helios, the Biblios of Helios, or the papers of Helios, the papers or the book of Ra. Of course, the content of the Bible is all misinformation. It really has nothing to do with the reality of Ra. That's the nature of the lie. But this is what they titled it. The Helios Biblios is literally the Helios book, or the book papyrus of Helios of Ra. We show in our next article that we're going to deal with that Ku Ra, the illumination, Aku, the divinity, the wisdom, Aku of the deity Ra. Ku Ra was corrupted by the whites in our offspring into the Quran, the so-called book of wisdom, which of course is nonsensical. There's no wisdom in the Quran. Now, when we talk about the TUA means the worship of Ra, we've shown that clearly, cosmologically, etymologically, going back thousands of years, engaged in ritual practice, the quote-unquote sun salutation, but it's really the provocation or worship TUA of Ra, which we engage on a regular basis and continue to do so today, adults and children. We can therefore see that each of the three major Western pseudo-religions have named their pseudo-holy books after Ra and falsely associate them with Ra, the creator, in some fashion. The papers, papyrus, Biblios of Helios of Ra, the papers of Ra, the illumination, Ku of Ra, Quran, the worship of Ra, Tua Ra, or Torah. This was done to lure the local population into accepting these pseudo-religions when they were first manufactured. The belief was that if the whites offered our people something that we were already familiar with, we would more readily accept the lies, pseudo-rituals, and empty symbolism attached to the familiar name. Some would even be lured into the foolish belief that Ra had something to do with the creation of the new false religion. Some of our people who are gullible, a very small percentage, and since it was such a small percentage, that's why it took them over a couple of thousand years before they could finally force this nonsense on our people. Not that our people didn't know about it, they just weren't embracing it. It took them a couple of thousand years, hundreds of years in certain places. Some of the gullible of our people, crackers, invade and actually win some wars and take over. The gullible amongst our people were saying, well, if they were able to take over, maybe Ra let them take over. Maybe we did something wrong. Maybe they are the, guided by Ra and so forth. Only the gullible will believe that, so they will play on the gullible, the minority percentage. That's why it took them so long to force this nonsense, but it's falling apart already. Now, as with all things regarding our trustery, cosmology, and culture, the whites and our offspring have deliberately lied about the etymology of the term Torah. You shouldn't be stupid enough to believe some of these pseudo-scholars, the whites and our offspring, will follow the proper rules of linguistics to make sure that they utilize the term that was cosmologically and etymologically sound. They stole a term from our language and lied about its meaning. No different than them stealing the term Amen. and saying it just means so be it. They are liars. It doesn't mean so be it in Hebrew. That's a lie. It's not a Hebrew word. So all these clowns would say, well, Amen doesn't come from the God Amen in ancient Kemet because that has to do with the deity. But in Hebrew, it just means so be it. So those are two different words. You're stupid. They stole the term and lied about the term. And even when they lied about the term, they still, the foundational meaning is still there. And we're going to get into that in the next article. But they stole the term and lied about its meaning. They stole the term Torah and lied about its meaning. However, even when they were lying, the foundational pieces are still there that they were not able to totally escape from, and we can prove that. So you look at what they have to say. The etymology and meaning of the term Torah. The Hebrew, and this is one of their common foolish definitions. The Hebrew word for law, Torah, is a derivation of the word, or of the verb yara, meaning to throw, cast, or shoot. The forms yara, and it's just simply the Y, Yod and R and H, or the, Y and R and A, yara, and they'll just vocalize it like that even though they don't have the vowels, but yara. The forms yara and yara are officially unrelated, but their basic mechanisms appear to overlap somewhat. This is their definition again. Both reflect an exchange of energy from a higher dispensing level to a lower receiving level. It appears that the form yara mostly describes the sending of the energy, either the exchange viewed from the perspective of the dispensing side, or else the shock-free absorption of the energy on the receiving side. The form yara appears to deal mostly with the receiving of the energy, the exchange viewed from the perspective of the receiving side, and that usually with the anticipation of intense alteration. This is what they're saying about yara, the root of the term Torah, quote-unquote Hebrew. Note that one of the two verbs, yara, is a biform of another form of yara, and also note the similarity between these forms and the verb ra, R-A-A, meaning to see or look at. And of course, that's talking about Ra, and Ra operating through the sun. The right eye of the sun is the right eye of Ra is the sun, left eye is the moon. They're talking about the Hebrew definitions of the term Torah, the root yara, talking about receiving and transmitting energy and shooting out energy. Talking about an exchange of energy, dispensing energy, and all of that. Now, they go further. The verb yara means to throw, cast, or shoot. It's used when arrows are shot, like in 1 Chronicles 10:3. Stones are stacked in Genesis 31:51, and even when lots are cast, thrown out. This verb is also connected to the act of reigning and to teaching or instructing, as in Exodus or in Proverbs. It's citing all the various usages of this verb, yara, meaning to shoot out, to throw, to cast, or to shoot. Even teaching or instruction is sending out energy, instructions, direction, and so forth. Now we say, as we can see in these above definitions, when aliens steal our language and culture, they do not understand the why of the definitions of the term. The root yara, so-called Hebrew, which is really not, but yara, the root yara, meaning to throw, cast, shoot, project, is a descriptive remnant of the original term definition. In Kemet, we show the man or woman actually engaged in the act of projecting, throwing, casting, shooting their life force energy through ritual provocation to the target, which is the deities and ancestral spirits themselves. And then we show Ani himself standing in front of Ra with his hands in the Twa Ra position, casting or shooting or releasing his energy in a provocatory fashion towards the divinity. So they have the remnant of the definition, but they don't know what Jora means to shoot. Why does it mean that? Why can't Uga Booga mean to shoot? Why does it have to be the sound Jora meaning to shoot? They just know that Jora means to shoot because they stole it from our language when Torah means to provoke that energy. Because the whites and offspring do not have the original term, the original Medutu hieroglyphs that demonstrate or act out the term. We have the actual image of the people doing this in the language, in the hieroglyphs, nor do they have the actual ritual practice of invoking deities and ancestral spirits who actually respond through spirit communication and spirit possession. When we shoot our energy out, we have that direct experience, so we know what it means to Torah, to project and receive a response after we provoke their energy. We have direct knowledge of that. Since the crackers do not have that, they cannot comprehend the cosmological foundation of the term. All they are left with are the remnant descriptions, innuendos, etc. Then we give another pseudo-etymology, which is typical. One of these, quote-unquote, ancient Hebrew websites written by the whites and their offspring. Quote, let us start by looking at the etymology of the Hebrew word Torah so that we may better understand its true definition. The word Torah comes from the Hebrew root word yada, just as the other cracker said, a verb which means to flow or throw something. This can be a flowing of an arrow from an archer's bow or the flowing of a finger to point out a direction. Nouns are derived from the verb by making one or two changes to the verb root. In this case, the yud, the y, the yud is replaced by an o, vav, and an m, mem, is added at the front of the word to form the noun more. A more is one who does the flowing. This can be an archer who flows an arrow, or a teacher who flows his finger to point out way the student is to go in the walk of life. Another noun formed by the same way, except that the T, a tav, is placed at the front of the word instead of an M, and we have the word Torah. Torah is what is flowed by the more, what flows out. This can be an arrow from the archer or the teachings and instructions from the teacher. A Hebraic definition of Torah is a set of instructions from a father to his children. Violation of these instructions are disciplined in order to foster obedience and train his children. A flowing out of energy. Not only just to flow or throw something, it can be a flowing of an arrow from an archer's bow or the flowing of a finger to point out a direction. So when you see the two hands in the sky pointing towards Ra, the flowing out of energy in that position of Torah, this is what they're talking about, but they don't have the original cosmology. They don't have the ritual practice. They don't have the Medutu showing the person with his hands and fingers pointing out something and the energy flowing through the person's hand. Now, yada meaning to flow or throw something. The flow up from an arrow or an archer's bow or the flowing of a finger to point out a direction. What's missing, as we say, is the cosmological context from which the term was actually born and commenced. The author cannot answer the question why. Why does it mean the flowing out? Why doesn't ini mean the flowing out of energy? Why does it have to be yara in the language, meaning the flowing out of energy? Because you stole that term from ancient Kemet when the people were standing with their hands out, shooting or projecting energy towards Ra at the beginning of the day, Torah, every single day of their lives, and even after death. They can't understand why do these sounds represent these ideas. We have the sound, we have the ideas, and the actual images that go with the sound and the ideas in the original language. So the flowing out, we show another image of the man with his two hands in the provocatory fashion, flowing that energy out, provoking, projecting, shooting, as they say, yara meaning to shoot, and so forth, and all of that. The whites and offspring cannot answer these questions, nor can the black pseudo-linguists and pseudo-scholars who have no knowledge of cosmology. and thus by default promote Eurocentrism and blackface. They are cosmologically incompetent because they have no facility with the actual ritual practice. However, we can and have answered these questions fully and completely through an experiential knowledge of cosmology and its expression in our ancient texts and current unbroken ritual practice. We must also understand that the medut for the D sound, which is the open hand, the palm, the D sound, is not only pronounced like the D in day, but also like the DG in judge. The name of the sacred city, Abdu, can also be rendered Abju in Kemet. The sacred or pure mountain in Napata, called the Wabdu, is also often rendered to Wabju. This is Gebel Barkal in Sudan, that sacred mountain of Amen and so forth. We have the similar exchange in the Akan language. In the Asante Akan dialect, the term for iron is Dade. In the Fanti dialect, it is pronounced Dade, so that D becomes a Z. The name Fanti, pronounced with the T sound as in time by the Asante. However, amongst the Fanti people themselves, they say Fanti, so the T becomes a Z. Same interchange we find in ancient Kemet. You'll find the name of the deity, Tahuti, also written and pronounced Jahuti. So the Ta becomes a Jahuti. When the whites and their offspring heard our people enunciating the term Dwa Ra or Twa Ra on a daily basis and read our text, we wrote Twa Ra, Dwara, 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 just like Tahuti becomes Jahuti, the Ta becomes Jah. It's the same with the Torah, Chora, Chora, Chora. You can say Chora with a Y, Chora, harshly, or you can say Torah, Torah, or Chora. The whites in our offspring, hearing us pronounce it with the D sound, spelled with the medut of the D sound, Torah, Dwara, and also the T sound, Tuara. Just like in Akan, you have Fanti or Fanti, you have Dade or Dadie or Dadie, the Die and the Da, the Torah and the Chora, and the whites in our offspring said Jora or Jora and Yora, and then they tried to change that etymologically and linguistically. Just as the whites in our offspring did not adhere to the cosmology of our culture when they recasted titles of deities as fictional characters in Palestine. Moses, Aaron, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, these fictional characters. We're talking about deities from ancient Kemet operating through the moon like Tahuti, that they're going to take this deity and make him a white character walking around in Palestine. Not a deity operating through the moon, but a cracker in Palestine. They did not follow or adhere to the cosmology of our culture when they recasted titles of deities as fictional characters in Palestine. Moses, Aaron, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, they also did not make sure to follow the rules of linguistics when stealing our terms and misapplying them. That's what it means to steal, to lie. They didn't make sure that their lie was linguistically sound, etymologically sound. They lied about that, and we have proven that conclusively. When explicating their cultural theft, the whites in our offspring do not admit to stealing the entire Moses story, for example, from the Kemeti text of the Book of the Cow of Heaven. And we go into detail about that, but we're about to go into detail about that in the next piece. So we don't have to go into it here. But their approach is to manufacture history, scholarship, archaeology, genetic studies, etc., to feed their false narrative of being the quote-unquote chosen of God. In the same fashion, they put forward false etymologies for the names of characters, their books, place names, etc., to feed the false narrative. And they all know this is what they've done. Only the clowns in our community following pseudo forms of linguistics and saying, oh, well, this can't be it, because the cracker said this doesn't mean that. And the cracker knows all along they stole it from the beginning. So, in the same fashion, as we said, they do so. The notion that the Torah is simply the Hebrew noun form of Torah is part of this deliberately false narrative designed to obfuscate the issue. They lie. We have direct evidence of the cultural theft of the whites and their offspring. When knowledge of our cosmology and truths are firmly grasped, we cannot be derailed by a blind acceptance of manufactured folk etymology. Then we have the same term tu, toi, the same du sound tu, toi means five. The same five-pointed star for toi in the term tu means five, tu nut means fifth, and so forth. So we see the term for five, tu, the term for fifth is tu nu. The five-pointed star is a representation of the word tu for five. You also see the five-pointed star for the term tua, meaning morning, tua, meaning to worship, to praise, and we show that. Worship, praises, invocation. Same five-pointed star for the word for five, tu, which is the root of tua. Same five-pointed star, it means five, fifth, and so forth. And it's also the same five-pointed star for toi, something in the morning. Toi also means to praise, to adore, to honor. The aten, rising in the morning, toi, is the beginning of the day, the beginning of our activities for the time for praise. It is the time for praise, prayer, invocation, worship, toi, ra. It is the first of the chapters of the Ru Nu Pert Imheru, Book of Coming Forth by Day. This is why the toi, ra, corrupted into Torah, was structured into tu, or toi, five, meaning the first, beginning, morning, toi, five books, also later called the Pentateuch, the five books. So even the five books, quote unquote, of Moses, the word five is toi, or tu. The word for morning is toi. The worship of Ra, Tuara. All of it is connected. We have the cosmological foundation. Only those who are cosmologically incompetent are not able to draw forth this accurate information. So that's the Torah piece. And we're going to go into the Qur'an piece. There's one, I'm going to take a call on the phone line real quick, and then we're going to get into that second piece, the piece on Qur'an.
Heads up, brother.
On the phone line. Number 3429, you had a question or a comment?
Heads up, brother. I don't mean to take you off the subject of what you're on. I just had two questions that I wanted some answer to. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. The first question was, is there any validity or importance in zodiac signs and African ancestral religion?
Yes, so not in the sense of course, the way the whites and offspring promote these tropical and sidereal zodiac charts. Of course, this notion of the zodiac comes directly from our people. Whites and offspring were not charting stars. We have been doing that for tens of thousands of years. The stars and the various planets and so forth, just like the sun has a direct effect on our bodies, the moon has a direct effect on the rising and falling of the tides because of its gravitational pull on Earth. The various star constellations have a literal effect upon our solar system, effect upon us. And you can see different color stars. I mean, if you can see a star shining and glistening, and it's a different color, then that has an effect upon you, just upon your eyesight. That's affecting you in an energetic fashion, in a measurable fashion. So there's different energy complex connected to these different constellations. These different constellations, depending on the position that they're in, influence our spirit bodies and so forth, but they are influential, but they are not determinant of our behavior and our character. What determines our character, our temperament, of our personality and so forth spiritually are the deities that were assigned to us before we even entered into the womb. we are assigned Abosom, Orisha, Vodu, and so forth before we even get into the womb. That becomes our head Abosom, our head Orisha, head Vodu, and so forth, and those of our patriclan and matriclan. So we come into the world connected to those divinities. But we're born on a certain day, and there are influences, just like if you're born in a very cold region and it's snowing and so forth, that has an effect on your body, has an effect on your temperament, effect on your physiology to a certain extent. If you're born in a tropical region, it has effects as well. So they are influential, but they are not determinant. So that's the key. What's determinant of our behavior, our character, our personality, the nature of our functioning in creation are the deities that were assigned to us, and what specific ancestral blood circle we were ushered into by our ancestors and ancestors. Which womb space were we brought into, or how do we were sent into the world through a specific ancestral clan. That ancestral clan and the Abosom, the deities that were assigned to us, those are the ones that determine, the direction of our lives.
Okay, got it. I have another question, brother.
Okay.
Being that Nubia and Kamit is the root of the African ancestral religion, is it okay that I continue to embrace the Kemetic African ancestral religion, or should I seek out what West African ancestral religion I'm linked to?
Well, no, your answer's in the beginning as well. So when we talk about ancient Kemet, which was a country, civilization, people called themselves Kamau and so forth, but there were different ethnic groups there, just like there are different ethnic groups there in Ghana. You have Ebe people in Ghana, you have Akan people in Ghana, you have Ga people in Ghana, Guam people in Ghana, but they all call themselves Ghanaian. We're living in ancient Kemet, we all called ourselves Kamau and so forth, but we were different groups, but we were all related. So when we left ancient Kemet and Khanat and migrated to different regions and took on and interfaced with the local manifestations of the Abosom of those regions and took that energy literally into our physical bodies, eating the plant life, taking in the mineral life and the animal life and so forth in those regions, and those Abosom possessing our people in those regions, that transforms our physical bodies when someone gets possessed. Transforms their cells, the sperm, ovum, everything else. So then when they have children, those children have bodies that are resonating at the frequency of that manifestation of the Abosom in that region. So they have a slightly different vibration. And their ritual songs, ritual dances, ritual practices will be slightly different based on their interfacing with the divinity where they are. And the same thing when we migrate over here. So there are slight differences based on what we have gone through, what we've been through over different migrations. Some people migrated to certain areas and became, allergic to certain foods, where certain other people didn't have those allergens because they never migrated to those different areas. So that becomes part of the culture. So there are social and ritual taboos as well. So when you really connect with your Insamanfo from ancient Kemet and Khanat, one of their jobs, their responsibility is to direct you to the specific ancestral blood circle of which you are a part, whether it's through central or south or west, Afurakani, wherever it is. They will direct you, if they haven't already given you those hints, they will direct you as to what that group is, because you have not only lived, in ancient times and so forth, but we moved to different places, took on the, so-called taboos, chiwadye and so forth, of those different experiences, encoded that within our physical bodies, within our spirit bodies, within our memory and so forth, and we must align ourselves with that. Just like on the lowest level, if your children are, one child is allergic to peanuts and another one is allergic to squash or something like that, then you have to acknowledge that. You can't just say, well, they're all my children and, fruits and vegetables are good for kids, so they're going to eat that. You have to recognize the different things, the nuances in their relationship with those parts of nature. And the same thing happens with us. We move to different places. We interface in a slightly different way. And the different rituals that we develop based on those nuanced differences manifested as that new expression of culture. And we must acknowledge that reality, because if we do not, we end up violating dietary taboos, violating spiritual taboos and so forth, and causing disorder within our lives. But your Insamah from ancient Kemet, is part of their responsibility to direct you to your specific ancestral blood cell. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, totally understood. Thank you, brother, for that. And one more quick question, if you can. Is there any power in the Hebrew alphabet or alphabet? Is there any power or significance in that language, the Hebrew?
No, it's not. Because all it is, of course, there's no such thing as a Hebrew alphabet in reality. They never created anything. What they did was they took, when you look at the so-called Canaanite alphabet, Proto-Sinaitic script and all that is a version coming directly from the hieratic script of ancient Kemet. All of those different characters come directly from a shorthand version of the hieratic script of ancient Kemet. So they didn't create anything. All they did was take away. So the whites and offspring much later came over. Black people in ancient Kanana, so-called Canaan, were utilizing that particular script. The whites and offspring started changing the nature of deities when they were writing about them and talking about them and so forth, because they could not communicate with them, adding attributes and taking away attributes and removing many female divinities and creating schematics and so forth of their foolish misunderstanding of the culture, and start promoting things that were misinformed. So, no, there's no power in the Hebrew alphabet because there's really no Hebrew alphabet. That's just a corruption of the Canaanite script, so-called Canaanite script, which comes directly from the ancient script of Kemet.
Understood, brother. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you and I appreciate everything you're doing, brother.
Okay. Merate, we appreciate the call. Okay. So let's get into this Qur'an document. And give me 1 second, hold on. All right, so we're going to get into this Qur'an document. And I believe this one is, so we have the link in the chat room. And this one is a little bit shorter, and some of the information we kind of touched on in the Torah piece, so we don't have to go through every single piece of it. But so this one is titled "Note on Qur'an," being the origin of the term Quran. Now, once again, in our publication Kukutuntum, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, we state that the term Quran comes from the term Qura or Akura in ancient Kemet. So on page 73 in our book Kukutuntum, we summarize this information. In this note, we get into some detail. So we say on page 73 of the Kukutuntum, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, this is near the end of the book, the quote, we say, the Quran is not a holy book. It is not divinely inspired. The Quran is a series of perverted fragments from ancient writings of Kemet. The term ku or aku in the language of Kemet has been used for thousands and thousands of years in Kemet to describe illumination, wisdom, divine intelligence. The ancestral spirits are thus called aku, as male, akut, female, plural, meaning the illuminated or shining one, for those who have embraced and exude divine wisdom. The whites and their offspring use the title Qura, or the divine wisdom of the Creator, and corrupted it into Quran. This is why they call the Quran the book of wisdom. Now, that's the quote from the Kukutuntum, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, at the end of the book when we were just summarizing some information. In this note, we go into detail. First, we give an example. We must recognize the manner in which the whites and their offspring misinform and thus mislead our people to continue to be enamored with them. We draw an analogy and subsequently address the cosmology which undergirds Qur'an. So we show the medutu for the term amen as well as men in ancient Kemet, the hieroglyphs for that term. The root, of course, of the name Amen, the great divinity, Amenet, the great mother, Amen, the great father. It has two roots, two fundamental meanings that are tied together. Amen as a general term meaning hidden, concealed. Something hidden, concealed, sometimes secret or mysterious, but that which is hidden or concealed. Amen. But then men also means to remain, to abide, to continue, to be permanent, to be stable, to be fixed, abiding, established, everlasting. That which is stable, permanent, fixed, abiding. Now, of course, the great God is Amen. The great God is Amenet. They are the great hidden, Amen, stable, permanent, and abiding being. The great invisible male and female force that undergirds all of creation. They are hidden, Amen, stable, permanent, and abiding. Menet. There's no thing or no entity more permanent than Amen, Amenet, the supreme being who is hidden, yet the foundation of all the universe. And of course, hidden things that are hidden or unseen, you can still feel the effect. You can see, as we said, two magnets on the table pushing one another. You don't see magnetism, but its effects are felt. You don't see gravity, but you're walking around on Earth because of the gravitational pull of Earth, and so forth. That's a hidden force that's stable, permanent, and abiding. Just an example. This goes back thousands of years. When you look at Amen and Amenet, the oldest religious writing, composition, yet unearthed, are the Meru texts, the so-called pyramid texts. You will find Amen and Amenet together, the great father and the great mother together in the pyramid text, the oldest religious scriptures or written religious composition yet unearthed in the world. And Amen and Amenet are there together. Now, what do the crackers say about Amen? We quote directly from Etym Online, which is an etymological dictionary online, but they simply repeat the same. If you go to the library and get a detailed book on etymology, or you go to the University of Texas or these different places in Austin and look at their etymological dictionaries online and stuff like that, you will find the same derivations that they have here. Common derivation, or so-called etymological root. So, Amen. They say Old English from late Latin, Amen, from ecclesiastical, Greek, Amen, from Hebrew, Amen, truth. Used adverbially as an expression of agreement, as in Deuteronomy, 1 Kings, compare the modern English verily, surely, absolutely, in the same sense. Now then they say, Amen is from the Semitic root, A-M-N, to be trustworthy, confirm, support. Used in Old English only at the end of Gospels, otherwise translated as swad and everything, but as an expression of concurrence after prayers, it is recorded from the early 13th century. So in this etymological dictionary, they say Amen comes from a Semitic root, A-M-N, which means verily, surely, absolutely. Of course, verily, surely means permanent, fixed, abiding, and so forth. But the crackers already lied talking about Amen comes from a Semitic root. You find Amen and Amenet in the pyramid text, and even prior to that, before there was a such pseudo-Semitic language. So they're lying from the beginning. Now we go to another etymology. It's from another source. What do they have to say? The usage of Amen, meaning so be it, as found in the early scriptures of the Bible, is said to be of Hebrew origin, which of course is a lie. But they go forth further. However, the basic triconsonantal root from which the word was derived is common to a number of languages, such as Aramaic and the Semitic branch of the Afrasian languages. The word was imported into the Greek of the early church from Judaism. From Greek, Amen entered the other Western languages. According to a standard dictionary etymology, amen passed from Greek to late Latin and then into English. Rabbinic scholars from medieval France believe the standard Hebrew word for faith, emunah, comes from the root amen. Although in English transliteration they look different, they are both from the root aleph, mem, and nun. That is, the Hebrew word amen derives from the same ancient triliteral Hebrew root as does the word aman, A-M-A-N. Grammarians frequently list aman under its three consonants, aleph, mem, and nun, which are identical to those of amen. Note that the Hebrew letter aleph represents a glottal stop sound, which functions as a consonant in the morphology of Hebrew. This triliteral root means to be firm, confirmed, reliable, faithful, have faith, believe. Stop right there. To be stable, fixed, permanent, and abiding. This is the ancient root of the meaning of the word men from ancient Kemet. To remain, abide, fixed, everlasting, all of that. A derivation of that, surely, verily, as they said in the other one, absolute, absolutely, verily, surely. And then you have here confirmed, to be firm, reliable. And then they go further, faithful, have faith, believe. But they're still trying to say it's from a triliteral root, from Hebrew. In Arabic, the word is derived from its triliteral common root word amana, which has the same meanings of the Hebrew word. Here's the next piece. Popular among some theosophists, proponents of Afrocentric theories of history, and adherents to esoteric Christianity, is the conjecture that Amen is a derivative of the name of the Egyptian god Amun. And of course, his name is not spelled like that, which is sometimes spelled Amen. Some adherents to Eastern religions believe that Amen shares roots with the Hindu Sanskrit word Om. Such external etymologies are not included in standard etymological reference work. The Hebrew word, as noted above, starts with Aleph, while the Egyptian names begin with a Yah. Now, the crackers just lied and said, oh, well, the Hebrew word begins with a different term, so it's not really the same word. They know that they're lying. They know the term comes directly, was stolen directly from the name of the deity, Amen. But with a little sleight of hand, they'll say, oh, well, the Hebrew word is spelled with the Aleph, and the Egyptian word begins with the Yah, but it's pure stupidity. But some clowns in our community, some Negroes who worship the whites and their offspring, who think that they're linguists, but simply ape the lies of the whites and their offspring because they believe deep down inside that the whites and their offspring are superior, they will repeat that foolish statement even though the whites and their offspring know that they've lied the whole time. So they'll call it an Afrocentric theory, and these clowns will simply repeat the cracker saying, oh, well, Amen in Hebrew is a different word than Amen in ancient Kemet. Even though it means stable, permanent, fixed, abiding, they stole the term. But of course, they don't want to lie and say, listen, we stole the term Amen because we were making up a fake religion to brainwash all you silly Negroes to make you worship us and forget about your deities. So this is why we have, they're not going to say all of that. They're just going to lie about it. And idiots go along with that. But we're beyond that kind of idiocy and that kind of aping. The meaning of AMN, referencing firm, reliable, faithful, etc., comes from the ancient root in our language men, meaning stable, permanent, fixed, reliable. This is the nature of Amen and Aminet. Now, and then we show Amint, and Aminti is the name of the West. This is the land of the setting sun, the land where the sun sinks below the ground and thus becomes Amen, hidden. When the sun sets, that is the end of the day. It brings things to a close. It is the greatest manifestation of finality in the world every single day. This is the association of Amen being said at the end of prayers. It is finality, completion, and is thus translated as so be it. These are descriptions of the meaning of the term. However, the whites and offspring do not know why the three letters AMN come at the end of prayers, means so be it, mean firm, reliable. We have the word, We have the definition of the word and also the why of the definition in our ancestral language and culture. It has always been part of our cosmology. These are deities that undergird the word Amen, Amen, and Amenet. Deities undergird that word. The crackers don't have those deities. They don't have that foundation. They only remembered, quote unquote, that AMN means so be it and firm, reliable, stable. The cosmology provides the why. The cosmology is founded upon the direct interaction with the deities themselves, so we understand why these sounds represent the divinity, energy of the divinity. The most expansive sound you can make is ah. Of course, the contracted sound is e, but the most expansive sound you can make is ah, the energy of ah. But then it's contained within a womb space, and then the primordial energy that has all of the potential to give birth to all things is the sound. So that amen sound and amenet, that's the energy that they emanate as the primordial undergirding energy and consciousness and being of creation. And then from which is Nun and Nunet, then you give birth to Ra and Ra'et and so forth. We dealt with that, the sounds of the deities and the nature of their birth names in one of our broadcasts of that name. And name, sounds of the deities, the nature of their birth names, you can check that out. So we just go through that exercise to show how our enemies, the whites and offspring, lied deliberately about the names of deities, about the words that they have stolen from the names of deities, ripped from the cosmology, bare of any of the cosmology, and then they try to recast it as a Semitic root, which is foolish. Now, let's get into Quran. Now that you have that foundation, and some of the pseudo-linguists listening have that foundation now. Now you can learn something. Quran. In the etymological dictionary, a variant spelling preferred by scholars, Quran with a K, from the Arabic Quran, literally book, reading, recitation, from Qura, meaning to read. Now, that's as far as they're going to go. They say, well, Quran comes from Quran, which means the book, reading, recitation, and Quran in Arabic comes from Qara, which means to read. That's it. Brainwashed Negroes simply swallow this and then run with it. Instead of asking, is this an outright lie? They simply repeat exactly what the whites and their offspring have said. In the book of the cow of heaven, the destruction of mankind, the creator of the universe, Ra, and is talking to Tahuti. And before we get into that, just want to let you know there's 10 minutes left in the online aspect of the broadcast. If you want to listen beyond 11:30, you must call in on the phone line before 11:30, because at 11:30 it will cut off automatically, and only the people who are on the phone will be able to hear. So if you want to get on the phone line, 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. You have about 9 minutes to call in, get on the phone line. We made an announcement about our event this Saturday, Minada, January 16th in Washington, D.C. It is a free event. We'll be presenting Kokobo movement, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality from the Afuraitkaitnit community through Ancestral Religion. We just posted the information on our Kokobo page on our website. We posted it in the Kokobo page on our Facebook page, Kokobo, Kokobo, and we'll do an event notification for that as well. Of course, it's a free event open to Afurakani people only. We will be giving away a free copy of our book, Kokobo, proving that dissexuality, homosexuality was never accepted in Kamit, going through those texts and properly translating those texts that the whites and offspring seek to utilize falsely as evidence of dissexuality, homosexuality in ancient Kamit, but we prove that they are actually repudiation of that, the divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality, and so forth. So we're going to be giving away a free copy of those books to everyone who comes out, as we always do. Of course, it's a free event, as all of our events are. our presentations are wherever we go, whatever cities we go to. We've given away over 700 books. We want to keep that process going. So you can come on out. It's like 6:30 p.m. Minnetonka, Saturday, January 16th in Washington, D.C. So check out the site there. And, of course, we have our Etchi Sign Conference, Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference coming up March 20th, which is the first day of the equinox. It's actually on a Sunday, March 20th here in Washington, D.C. All-day conference. We're going to have a number of presenters on ancestral religious reversion. With ancestral religion from an authentic perspective, born of our blood circles. We're talking about not conversion, transforming people into something, but reversion, etchi sign, returning to our primordial, pristine essence, our ancestrally inherited religious practices, born of our blood circles. So this is what we're going to be dealing with, having a number of presenters, vendors, and so forth. If you'd like to place an ad in our book, which will be given away to everyone who comes to the event, we're going to have a number of articles on ancestral culture and religion and cosmology, but also a directory of businesses, organizations, or institutions. Or if you would just like to support, you can place an ad, send us your JPEG files. We have the rates for ads, 1/4, half page, and full page. So on the Etchi Sign page, you'll see all that information. Also, we will be putting a notification out for tomorrow's show. It's going to be at a special time, the Egua Marketplace show at 4 p.m. We will have Sister Wabet Raven, the Sat Heru, the authoress of Wachet Yoga, which is her new book that will be coming out very soon, and she's going to be taking pre-orders, but she's going to be doing a presentation on her book in Orlando, Florida this weekend, January 17th, which is a Sunday. So we want everybody to come out to that event and support her work. She's talking about Wachet or Wachet Yoga, born of her ancestresses and ancestors, dealing directly with the divinity Wachet. So this is an ancestrally inherited form of ritual practice and invocation of the Abosom, of the Ntoru, and so forth. So she's going to be on for our show tomorrow for Egua Marketplace. It will be early because of the schedule at 4 p.m. Tune in for that, and we're going to send out an event notification for that, as well as please attend her event in Orlando, Florida. So, okay, and I saw yes, your in the chat room mentioned the book. Yes, this week your book will be coming out. Yours will be sent out, and then we have another sister's book will be sent out as well. She has a couple of books coming out. We'll be sending those out. Actually, both of yours will be sent out tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So, all right, so we're going to get back into that Kura section. All right. So in the text called the Book of the Cow of Heaven, often if you Google Destruction of Mankind, Ancient Egypt, or Book of the Cow of Heaven, Ancient Egypt, or Book of the Heavenly Cow, Ancient Egypt, you find various transliterations and translations of that particular text found in the tombs of Tutankhamen and Seti and so forth. So the Book of the Cow of Heaven, so-called Destruction of Mankind, the creator of the universe tells the deity Tahuti to come with him to the mountainous region. Ra then takes on the form of the divine light, Aku. He is Ra Aku. He then makes the deity Tahuti his representative on earth. Tahuti is the deity of divine wisdom, the spokesperson of Ra. You see Tahuti with the crane head, so-called ibis, the habui bird, and so forth. The divine wisdom male, whereas Seshat is the female force of divine wisdom. He is the spokesperson of Ra, the male spokesperson of Ra. The light of the sun, Ra, operating through the sun, is what illuminates Aku. Remember, Aku means illumination. The light of the sun, Ra operates through the sun, illuminates the moon. Tahuti operating through the moon. Tahuti receives illumination from Ra, revelation from Ra. So Ra tells Tahuti, come with me to the mountainous region. He comes up with Ra to mountainous region, Ra takes the form of a divine light. He is called Ra-Aku. He makes Tahuti his representative on earth because Ra says he's no longer going to rule directly on earth. He's moving into the heavenly realm, and he wants Tahuti to take up residence as far as being the sovereign on earth. He's going to take the place of Ra. So Tahuti goes up in the mountains with Ra. Ra takes the form of divine light and makes Tahuti his representative on earth. Ra, operating through the sun, is what illuminates the moon. Tahuti operating through the moon. Tahuti, the moon, receives the illumination from Ra, meaning the revelation of Ra, the illumination, the wisdom. As the illuminated wise one, Tahuti can now instruct us in divine wisdom, enlightenment, because the moon was enlightened by the sun. And enlightenment, illumination, allows us to see or perceive when in darkness, when in ignorance. Tahuti is corrupted into the angel Jibril in the Quran and Gabriel in the Bible. In the Bible, when God sends Gabriel down to the two Marys at the resurrection of the fictional Jesus, this is an episode from the Metternich Stele, so-called Sorrows of Isis, Sorrows of Auset, where Auset and Nebuchadnezzar, and sometimes they take the form of the two Merit divinities, Merit Shema and Merit Met. Merit of the south and Merit of the north. So Auset and Nebuchadnezzar, the two Marys, Merit Shema, Merit Met, are lamenting the death of Heru. Heru is the baby who had been stabbed by a scorpion. He died. Auset and Nebuchadnezzar, they come. Auset comes and finds the baby Heru died. She picks him up and starts to cry. Then Nebuchadnezzar, her sister, comes, and Auset and Nebuchadnezzar, Merit Shema, Merit Met, the two Marys are crying over the death of the baby Heru, the child of the god Asa. So when they're lamenting the death of Heru, the boat of Ra is sailing across the sky, the boat of the sun, and Ra sitting in the boat and sailing across the sky, and they're lamenting, and then he stops the boat in the middle of the sky because they're lamenting. And then he sends Tahuti down to earth to facilitate the resurrection of Heru. Tahuti is he from whom the whites manufactured Gabriel. So of course, that's what happened. In the little story about Jesus being dead, the two Marys come to the tomb, and then the angel Gabriel is sent there and say, oh, he is risen. He is resurrected. This is where that comes from. In the Quran, Jibril, Gabriel, the angel who comes down to bring the enlightenment, the illumination, the wisdom to the fictional Muhammad, is Tahuti coming from the presence of Ra. Ra is misnomered. One of the titles of Ra is Ra-Ur. Ur means great, or the great one. Ra-Ur is Ra the great. Amen-Ur is Amen the great. Heru-Ur is Heru the great. Urt-Hekau is the great one, Hekau. Ur-Hekau is the great one. Ur of Hekau, the divine word, that is a title of Set, so-called Ombos, Nubit. Then you have Urat, Hekau, which is a title of Nebuchadnezzar, the great one of divine words and so forth. So Ur means great, the great one. This title Ur becomes Ur, and later in Semitic Ul, Ul, Al, El, Ilu, Ulu, and all of that. That comes directly from Kemet. The rolling R in Kemet becomes the letter L in the other language. So, Ra, Ur, Ra the Great becomes Ur, Ra, and Ur-Ra becomes Ullah, and Ura, La, Allah, and all of that. And we show that in the Kukutuntun. And in some other texts as well. So, in the Quran, Jibril, the angel who comes down to bring the enlightenment, illumination, wisdom to the fictional Muhammad, is Tahuti coming from the presence of Ra. Ra had just illuminated Tahuti, gave Tahuti the light, the illumination. The sun enlightens the moon. And now the moon can shine on those who are in the darkness. We're in the darkness. You have a full moon that shows up. It's enlightened by the sun, and now it can light your path in the darkness. You can find your way around. So you won't be ignorant, so you won't hurt yourself and so forth. So, Angel Jibril, the angel who comes down to bring the enlightenment, illumination, wisdom to the fictional Muhammad, is Tahuti, coming from the presence of Ra, misnomer Ura, Ullah, Allah, in the cave, mountain, to bring Ra's illumination, Aku, to the prophet. Aku means illumination, wisdom, and so forth. This is why the book is falsely called the book of wisdom. It is the Aku Ra, the illumination of Ra, the Qur'an, so-called Quran. Tahuti, Jibril, literally gives the fictional prophet the light, illumination, Aku of Ra, literally. Of course, the Quran is nothing but nonsense. It has no wisdom whatsoever. We can go further regarding Muhammad, as we went into detail in the Kuku Tuntum, the book, but we mentioned here as well, the deity of the waters. Water in Kemet is Mu. The deity of the waters, and we show an image of him. He's called Hap or Hapi. There's a dual divinity. Hapi of the north and Hapi of the south. Hapi of the north is called Hap. Met. Met means north. Reset means south. The deity of the southern Nile is Hap Reset. Hapi of the south. The deity of the northern Nile is Hap Met, or Hap of the north. The word for waters is Mu. Muhap Reset, waters, Mu of Hap Reset of the northern Nile. That's the deity of the northern Nile. Muhap Met, waters, Mu of Hap Met of the northern Nile. One is in the southern Nile, Muhap Reset. One is in the northern Nile, Muhap Met. The spirit animating the river in the northern part of Kemet, that same spirit that animates that river today. You pour libation at the river, that spirit can still possess people. Hapmet, the waters Mu of Hapmet, the northern Nile divinity. Muhammad has been animating that river for millions of years. Now, he also operates through the river, not only on earth, but the river of stars in the sky called the Hap, or the Hap, or the great or Hap, so-called Milky Way, the river of stars in the sky. The heavenly Nile, as they would call it in ancient Kemet, Hap, or. The light of the moon, Yah Tahuti, illuminates the heavenly Nile. So we show an image of the full moon next to the river of stars, which is the heavenly Nile. The full moon illuminates that river of stars in the sky and makes it bright. The light of the moon, Yah Tahuti, illuminates the heavenly Nile, meaning Jibril brings illumination to Muhammad, Muhammad, Muhammad in the sky. So when you see the full moon near the heavenly Nile, what you're looking at is Tahuti operating through the full moon. He's enlightening Muhammad. He's giving illumination, Aku, the Aku that he received from Ra. Tahuti operating through the moon receives the Aku, the illumination from Ra. And once he receives the illumination from Ra, and he's a full blazing moon, then he transmits that illumination of Ra, that Aku Ra, to the heavenly Nile, Muhammad. That's Jibril bringing illumination to Muhammad in the sky. The Hap River is said to arise from the rock caverns in the south of Kemet. This is why they say Muhammad or Muhammad went into a cave in the mountains to receive the revelation of Jibril. All of the whites and offspring know this. They simply lie about it because they know that many of our people still worship them and their pseudo methods of investigative inquiry, and will thus perpetuate misinformation under the guise of pseudo-linguistic theory. We show the Medusu for the term Aku. words of power, protective formulae, spell, the magical formulae of Tahuti, they misnomer Thoth. That's one of the titles of Aku. Of course, Aku also means a light, splendor, radiance, brilliance, glorious deeds, splendid acts, virtues, excellences, blessings, benefits. Aku, referring to people, are those wise people, wise, instructed people, beings of light. Of course, the ancestresses and ancestors who become Aku, Akut, the illuminated ones, the shining ones, because they are full of wisdom. They become like the stars in the sky, and they're associated with stars in the sky, not because it has anything to do with extraterrestrialism. When you see an Aku or an Akut, an illuminated ancestor or ancestress, it's the same as here in the physical world. If someone's a little bit clairvoyant, if somebody has a strong, powerful spirit, strong, powerful aura, their aura is big and vibrant and extends further beyond their body. Somebody's weak and sickly, then their aura is closer to their body. It's very dim and weak and dark. Somebody makes their transition, see them clairvoyantly, or your child can see the spirit in the house clairvoyantly and will tell you, I just saw so-and-so in the spirit. The ones who are more powerful, they have a more vibrant, brilliant, powerful, expansive aura, kahibit, whereas the weaker ones are more transparent and more weak and dim. So those ones with the more vibrant, powerful, radiant aura, in the darkness, they're like a little illuminate one in the darkness, literally. Their aura is a shining, illuminate, vibrant aura. They're like akin to the stars in the sky that are shining and vibrant and illuminate in the darkness. They light the way. So when there are a lot of stars outside, if you're in the south, we get somewhere where they're in a rural area where there are no street lights. If there's not a lot of stars out that night and so forth, then it's super pitch black. But if there's a full moon and the river of stars in the sky, that's illumination. You can see your way around. Those stars are bright, but the moon is the brightest thing in the sky at nighttime, of course. And it illuminates the heavenly night and the little stars as well. And when you see ancestresses and ancestors who have strong, vibrant auras, they are illuminate. Literally, they are aku. They are vibrant, they are shining, they are illuminate. But also, because of their wisdom, they are illumined or quote-unquote enlightened, meaning they can show you the path through the darkness so you can navigate your way through darkness or ignorance and so forth. So that's what aku literally means. And it's been that for thousands of years. But then aku also means words of power, protective formulae spells, the magical formulae of Tahuti. Then, of course, Aku is a title of Ra when he's Aku Ra or Ra Aku Ra, the illuminated one. Note that the bird represented in the Medusa as the Aku bird is the crested Habui bird, the crested ibis, so-called the crested bird of Tahuti. Now we give a section from the Book of the Cow of Heaven that's directly relevant. We talked about the cosmology, so let's read directly from the book to see how it all comes together. And the majesty of this god Ra said, call to me the god Tahuti. And one brought the god to him forthwith. And the majesty of this god Ra said unto Tahuti, let us depart to a distance from heaven, from my place, because I would make light and the divinity of light, Aku, in the Duat and in the land of caves. You, Tahuti, shall write down the things which are in it, and you shall punish those who are in it, that is to say, the workers who have worked iniquity or rebellion. Through you, I will keep away from the servants whom this heart of mine hates. You, Tahuti, shall be in my place, Asti, and you shall therefore be called Tahuti, the Asti of Ra, meaning one who sits on the throne of Ra, representing him in the world, because Ra's in the heavenly regions now. Tahuti is going to represent him as a spirit in the world. Aset or Asit means the throne or a seat, and then Asiti or Asti means he of the throne, the one who has taken the throne and so forth, the one with that executive authority. Now, then Ra says, moreover, I give you the power to send forth. And thereupon comes into being the Habwi bird of Tahuti, the so-called ibis crane and so forth. Then Ra says, I moreover give you the power to lift up your hand before the two companies of the divinities who are greater than you. And what you do shall be fairer or greater than the work of the divinity called Ken. And therefore shall the divine bird, Tekni of Tahuti, come into being. So that bird comes into being. Then he says, and we highlight, bold this, moreover, I give you the power to embrace the two heavens with your beauty and with your rays of light. Therefore shall come into being the moon god Yah of Tahuti. That's why Tahuti becomes Yah Tahuti. And of course, Yah is where the crackers get Yah and Jah from. Habwi, the bird of Tahuti, is corrupted into Habwe and Yahweh and so forth. We show that in the Kukutun Torah. But Ra gives Tahuti the power to embrace the two heavens with his beauty and with his rays of a light. There came into being the Yah, the moon, and of course Tahuti wears the crescent moon on his head. He says, moreover, I give you the power to drive back the Hanebu. Therefore shall come into being the quote-unquote dog-headed ape called Anan of Tahuti. So you see the dog-headed ape. We show that image of Tahuti sitting there in the boat, and then the little dog-headed ape who's called Anan next to him, his assistant. And Ra gave him this assistant, and he said he shall act as a governor. Then he says, moreover, Tahuti, you are now in my place, in the sight of all those who see you and present offerings to you, and every being shall ascribe praise unto you, O you who are a divinity, who are God, in my place. Then the text says, whoever shall recite the words of this composition over himself shall anoint himself with olive oil and a thick unguent, and he shall have propitiatory offerings on both his hands of incense, and behind his two ears shall be pure natron, and sweet-smelling salve shall be on his lips. So they're talking about the ritual practices you should go when you're reciting this particular text. Whosoever shall recite the words of this composition. Then it says, he shall be arrayed in a new double tunic, and his body shall be purified with the water of the Nile flood. And he shall have upon his feet a pair of sandals made of white straps, and a figure of the goddess Ma'at shall be drawn upon his tongue with green-colored ochre. Whensoever Tahuti shall wish to recite this composition on behalf of Ra, he must perform a sevenfold purification for 3 days, and priests and ordinary men shall do likewise. Whoever shall recite the above words shall perform the ceremonies which are to be performed when this book is being read. And then it goes into some more detailed information. Before we go further with that, it says, whensoever Tahuti shall wish to recite this composition on behalf of Ra. And the person reciting should also be purified with the water of the Nile flood, with Muhammad. So the person who's getting the recitation, he's covered with the water of the Nile flood, the water of Muhammad. And then whensoever Tahuti shall wish to recite this composition on behalf of Ra, he must perform a sevenfold purification. So Tahuti, quote-unquote, Jibril, recite. Qura, the term in Arabic, Qura, meaning to recite, recitation or to recite. Tahuti or Jibril recite on behalf of Ra or Ura or Ullah and all of that to the fictional cartoon character Muhammad, talking about Muhammad, the waters of the northern Nile. This is why the person has to be arrayed in a double tunic, and his body should be purified with the water of the Nile flood. So that then Tahuti shall recite this composition on behalf of Ra, performs the sevenfold purification and all of that. So Tahuti literally recites Kra, the wisdom of Ra, Akura. And he literally is the wisdom of Ra. And then we show the Medutu for Ra, Ku, and all of that. Tahuti recites this composition on behalf of Ra as the text states above. In the Islamic myth, Jibril comes to Muhammad and recites the quote-unquote Quran, the revelation of the wisdom Aku of Allah, Ra. As the text states above, his body shall be purified with the water of the Nile flood, a reference to Muhammad receiving purification, revelation in connection with divine wisdom, recitation, Aku, Ra. Tahuti is instructed to write down what is in the spirit realm. This is the writing down of the Qur'an, so-called Quran after revelation. All of that is encoded within that book of the cow of heaven. Everything from Muhammad to Jibril to Allah to the recitation and to the writing down of the recitation of the revelation. Then, of course, after all of that, we show then what does Wikipedia have to say about Quran? Quran literally meaning the recitation. Also Romanized Quran. Quran is the central religious text of Islam, which Muslims believe to be a revelation from God, Allah. It is regarded as the finest piece of literature in the Arabic language. Quranic chapters are called surahs and ayah. Surah, ayah. Muslims believe, remember, Ra, and then Yah, surahs and ayah. Muslims believe the Quran was verbally revealed by God to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel or Jibril, gradually over a period of approximately 23 years, beginning on the 22nd of December, 609 CE. Note that the revelation of Ra corrupted Allah, Ra becomes Ullah, Allah, Allah, and all of that. Notice that the revelation of Ra, Ullah, through Tahuti Jibril began on December 22nd, a day after the winter solstice. The winter solstice is the shortest day of the year. They knew that after the winter solstice, the sun's light or illumination began to increase 1 or more minutes per day. The birth of the sun at Christmas for the Christians is the revelation of the sun, meaning light or illumination, Qura, Akura, for the Muslims at the same time of the year. So we finally say when we cease placing quote-unquote faith in the pseudo-linguistics of the whites and their offspring, then actually go to the source, our cosmology, we find the real answers, proper etymologies rooted in the cosmological infrastructure which gave birth to the term. You have the form of the term, the consonantal structure. You have the function of the term, the definition, but then the cosmological infrastructure that gave birth to the terms related to deity. That's the piece that Negroes miss and the whites and their offspring lie about, and this is what makes pseudo-linguists cosmologically incompetent. But when you have facility with the deities, you can perceive the cosmological infrastructure that gives birth to the form and the function or the structure and the substance of these terms. And then you have the full picture. That's that particular piece. Okay. Oh, and then there was a question in the chat room. You had a picture of Tahuti kneeling with Sashat kneeling in back of him with her right hand up and left hand stretched out with an open palm. What is the meaning of these positions? Sometimes when you see them pictured behind each other, in front of each other, sometimes it's really side by side, but because, it's a relief, two-dimensional relief or whatever, they want to show the whole body of each person, so they put them in front of each other, behind each other, and so forth. The provocation is a hand turned outward. The convocation is a hand turned upwards in a receiving fashion, so it's a provocation, provoking the energy, receiving the energy. So when you see those hand movements, and when we engage those practices ourselves, we're receiving energy or we're provoking energy. You can provoke the energy of someone and then receive their energy as well. Yeah, they can provoke your energy and receive your energy as well. So that's what those hand movements deal with. In a similar fashion, just on a mundane level, with martial arts, when somebody or engaging in qigong and things like that, people just doing just movements can move their life force energy, their divine living energy, the ba energy, ba'et energy moving through themselves and so forth, pushing the energy outward or receiving, pulling the energy in and so forth. When you see ritual dance in Afuraitkaitnit culture, when they use provocatory movements, pushing the energy out or opening their hands to receive the energy from the Abosom and so forth, it's the same thing. All right. Okay, so it's almost 12, so the broadcast is going to cut off any minute because we went into overtime. So we're going to end it here. But I'll say once again for tuning in. Yeah, again, we're going to have that special broadcast at a special time tomorrow, 4 p.m. for Egwa Marketplace. The Sister Wabet Raven Teshat Sat Heru, the authoress of Wachet Yoga, her new book, and she'll be doing a presentation in Orlando, Florida this weekend, January 17th. So you need to get to that presentation. You can also pre-order the book right now, going to her page on Facebook. Go to Wabet Teshat Sat Heru, and you can go to our website, Teshat services, language services, and writing services, because she did a broadcast a number of months ago about her Teshat services, her business. So she did a great broadcast there. You can look in the archives for that broadcast. Then she'll be back on tomorrow. But you can order her book today. You can pre-order her book today. Go directly to the website and check that out. So, okay. So, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. And Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. Good job.